we cannot finance infrastructure or defense only with debt. If we don't succeed in making sure we get more labor supply, we will just see a price increase and the money will flow into the pockets of company owners or managers. So it's really about encouraging people to work more.
Germany's new parliament is kicking off its first session just a few days after the outgoing parliament signed off a historic spending package worth 1 trillion euros. The money is meant to go towards defense and infrastructure. I'm joined by Clemens Fuest. He helped draft the huge investment plan. Clemens, what issues should the new parliament put at the top of their economic agenda?
They should put making this package a success to the top of the agenda. And that means we need reforms in planning permissions, for instance. There's now a lot of money available, but how do we get that money to work? One thing that could hold it up is complex planning permissions to build infrastructure. One needs to go through these planning processes. Something else that's needed is reforms to make sure there is enough labor supply. A lot of companies building infrastructure tell us we don't have enough people. We don't find additional employees. So the government needs to come up with reforms encouraging labor supply. And last but not least, we need reforms where spending in other areas is cut, because in the long term we cannot finance infrastructure or defense only with debt. So at some point this will need to be supported by tax money. So spending cuts are needed in other areas.
Right, let's go back to these reforms, because German infrastructure projects are infamous. On average, it takes 23 years to build new train tracks in the country, for example. You say we need more labor. Now, what could these reforms look like? Would this mean opening up to more immigration into the country, for example?
There are various instruments or various changes that could be made. One is encourage immigration into the labor market. That's a very important part. But the question is, of course, how large is the potential? For instance, a lot of people in the past came from Eastern European countries, but wages in these countries are rising, and these countries are themselves experiencing a scarcity of labor. So it's not clear how far that will lead. We will have to do something domestically. We could get rid of a bank holiday that has been suggested. It's not very popular. One way of encouraging labor supply would be to improve childcare so that parents find it easier to work maybe full-time more frequently and not just a part-time. And we need to change our tax and transfer system. For many people, the net income they can earn by working more is limited because they lose transfers, they pay taxes and social security contributions. So we need to cut taxes and reform the transfer system so that when people work more, it's really worth it for them. So their net income, their disposable income really increases.
Right, we're talking here a lot about workers, and who do you expect to benefit from these $1 trillion now being poured into the German economy, focused on infrastructure and defense? Will it be managers at arms companies like Rheinmetall, or will ordinary Germans actually feel this investment in their wallets?
Well, hopefully we will all benefit by being more secure. I mean, that's the main issue we are talking about. The geopolitical threats have increased massively. And if this spending on defense works, we will all be more secure. So in that regard, we will all benefit. And then the idea is, of course, that we will jointly bear the cost of this increase in defense. What we do not intend to do is raise the profits of companies or raise salaries of managers. But of course, to some extent, that will happen. And to what extent that happens, that really depends on how we succeed in enacting complementary reforms. If we don't succeed in making sure we get more labor supply, we will just see a price increase and the money will flow into the pockets of company owners or managers. So it's really about encouraging people to work more. Overall, more defense means a higher cost for the economy. So in a way, we are all poorer because we need to come up with these resources for defense. So it's not so much about having people benefit, apart from the fact that we'll all benefit from avoiding a war in Europe.
Speaking of security in the future, prominent German economists like Veronika Grimm have warned that the new debt we're taking on now will lead to higher interest rates and will have to be paid back by future generations. And what would you say to 20-year-olds in Germany who worry about that prospect now?
For 20-year-olds, it would be better if the government came up with cuts. Of course, cuts take time, and for a period of transition, it makes sense to finance the additional defense with debt, but not permanently. So the 20-year-olds, it is in the interest of the 20-year-olds to support policies that cut spending in the budget. That will take some time, but in the long time, we need to spend to finance defense with taxes, not through debt. That doesn't work. So in that regard, Veronika Grimm is completely right.
You've mentioned these cuts multiple times now. Which areas do you propose that this new parliament starts cutting funding?
This is always a political decision. So we are talking about distributional conflicts. Should pensioners bear the burden? Should recipients of social transfers bear the burden? Should we pay lower wages, try and pay lower wages in the public sector? These are political decisions. It makes no sense to try and answer these questions scientifically or academically. This needs to be discussed and negotiated politically. There's a lot of potential. There is a huge subsidy to the pension system. There are huge subsidies to industry. They have increased recently. We have certain transfers in our budget where cuts could be made. But in the end, it's a political decision, how we deal with these distributional conflicts.
Right, we're expecting to see a bump in Germany's economic growth as a result of this package. And you're saying cuts are important in order to prevent debt for future generations. But what other very concrete measures are important to ensure that this isn't just a sugar rush, but that this is sustainable growth?
First of all, I think we need a plan, a long-term strategy for using this money. If we think about the infrastructure, to use it in a meaningful way, we need to have an idea about what the infrastructure should be in 2035 or 2040. I think if we drew such a plan, we would say what we certainly want is that our existing train tracks, that our existing roads work well. So a lot of money should go into improving our existing roads, renovating our bridges, and the focus should be less on building new roads or building new train tracks. Politically, new roads and new things are attractive because they can be opened. They are very much noted, whereas investment in maintaining things is less noted, and that's why it's been neglected. Overall, we need a very careful strategy to use this money wisely. Then we need to encourage companies to build up capacity, and that only works if there is a meaningful medium-term planning, not just short-term spending and then stop and go. So some reliable framework would be helpful.
Right, and your institute, the IFO Institute, tracks the overall sentiment of businesses in Germany, and you're saying we need businesses to help us reach sustainable growth. What's the mood like? What's the business mood like in Germany right now?
Well, what we observed today in the survey is an improvement in the mood, and certainly mostly an improvement in expectations. It's not so much the current situation. This has also improved a little, but it's about expectations. It seems like firms do give the new government some credit, and they expect this government to get its act together and do the necessary reforms. In manufacturing, for instance, one of the areas where we've had a lot of difficulties recently, we see an improvement in expectations, although, for instance, order books are empty and orders are still falling. So it's really this idea that hopefully the new government will enact reforms also beyond the debt package and improve things so that companies will invest again. And now if the government doesn't want to disappoint these expectations, it has to deliver the reforms.
Clemens Fuest of IFO Institute, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.